Hey there, it's Whitney from the School of Evolutionary Herbalism. So I have a quick question for you. What is the top thing that you think about that will make you a better herbalist? You might think about studying more, or maybe you feel like you need to be practicing more, or maybe you feel like getting, some more courses under your belt, or some really solid training, or becoming certified as a practitioner or something. There are many, many different ways that we can improve ourselves and improve our practice of plant medicine. However, I want to share one thing with you today that I believe is really critically important, and yet it's easily overlooked. It's something that you probably won't read about in herb books or on forums online or whatever. It's something that is actually incredibly, incredibly important to digesting everything that you study. So before I talk about that, I want to ask you one other question. So when was the last time you completely unplugged from technology? That's like maybe you took a couple days and didn't look at your phone, didn't look at social media or check your inbox, or have you gone a week even? I know that seems kind of crazy that we're even asking that question. You're probably wondering what in the world that has to do with becoming a better herbalist. But it's really important to talk about this because we're at a time right now where humans have never had this level of technology before, as far as we know. The amount of time that we're spending on a daily basis on screens has so many impacts. I'm not going to dive into all of that, as far as I'm sure you're aware of the different emotional, psychological, and physical implications of spending so much time on computers and phones and screens. But on a different level, I want to talk about, why does unplugging from technology make you a better herbalist? Well, let's look at all of our traditional systems of herbalism and healing that we know about. So, I'm just going to give an example of Ayurveda, for example, right? And Chinese medicine is very similar too, in the same way that some of these traditional systems that are focused on vitalism, that are focused on working with the vital intelligence of your body, also are working with the vital intelligence of nature. And all of those systems, at some point when you go far enough back, they were born out of a direct perception and connection and communication with the natural world. So, the ancients actually studied nature and understood the subtle ways that the cycles of the seasons moved and the daily rhythms, and how that impacts our whole health and our minds and our bodies and our emotional health, all of it. There's so many layers to if you just look at one of those systems, like just Ayurveda, for example, it's so deep and so sophisticated and complex, and yet so simple in the way that it has this root in nature. And you can see, the depth of relationship that was understood of how a human being interacts with nature, how we are a microcosm of the macrocosm of the earth. So everything is reflected, as within, so without, as above, so below. As our tradition of alchemy will also, there's a ancient truth from the tradition of alchemy that we work with as well. So if you want to understand Ayurveda, or you want to understand alchemy, you can learn a lot by reading and studying and, doing as much as you can in that realm. But there's a certain point that you'll get to that if you don't actually spend any time in nature, that there's something that's not going to click in. So this is where it becomes information that you study and that you read about, and then into something that you experience. What we have a saying where you know something by heart, right, is an expression that we use all the time in our culture, to know something to have it memorized. But to know it by the heart, right, is to experience it, where it comes from being intellectual into experiential. And so the reason why I'm talking about unplugging from technology, for just giving ourselves a bit of time, on a consistent basis, to have a bit of a fast from the screen world, is that this can help us to develop our senses, our intuitive senses and our feeling senses, to connect with and perceive nature. So, and plants, you know, you may have spent time doing a plant sit or a plant meditation where and if you aren't familiar with that, it's like you basically just go out somewhere, maybe it's even in your yard, or maybe you go somewhere to the forest and just sit with a plant and try to connect with it and try to basically just humble yourself to just listen. Because it's one thing, you might read about yarrow and have all of the information and know everything about it, but then when you actually go see it in person and you actually see the living being in front of you, this whole other depth of knowing comes into your heart, and that it's like it goes from being two-dimensional, like where you read it on the two-dimensional screen, to becoming a three-dimensional experience of and relationship with that being. It comes alive because you're there with the living plant. And when you taste it and when you actually take that herb inside of your own body, then you start to actually feel how it works. So that's one of the ways that taking a screen fast can improve your connection with plants and your understanding of these traditional systems of herbalism and medicine, is by developing our sense organs and developing our ability to perceive and attune to nature. That sounds like a little bit of it's maybe a strange thing as far as in the evolution of humans that we're kind of even talking about that. Maybe it's something that was just more intact within humans, but I think because of the level of inundation, again, that we have in this this kind of artificial light and artificial experience. I mean, technology is super cool, so I'm not trying to bash it. I'm like, we're connecting right here through this screen, so it's awesome. But there's definitely something where it can start to gunk up your mind and has a whole impact on your nervous system, that you're also being fed tons of stimulation of information all the time. So we have to pull back a little bit. And if we want to really get to that place where we're also learning new things from these plants, just like the ancients did when they gathered, put together these systems of Ayurveda, for example, or alchemy, when they gathered that information and brought it together, if we want to get to that place of where they were at, to be able to create these incredibly sophisticated, profound systems of medicine, then it's going to take some discipline and some work for us to unplug from technology for a little bit, to also plug ourselves back into a natural system so that we can pay attention and understand how healing works, right, within the body and through that plant. And that is something that is kind of hard at this time, because that's something that you might work on the computer, that might be your job. Like, I do that a lot, but if you're on the weekend, or maybe just catching yourself when you're not at work, maybe it's possible to just not check your phone or not be, on social media or something while you have your time off. Just being aware of ways like that. How can we unplug ourselves more and connect ourselves more to an ancient way of perceiving and learning, which is through just being with nature. And another way that this also can improve your understanding of herbalism is that to really get how an herb works too, if you start to pay attention to where that plant grows or who it grows by, there'll be even formulas unto themselves, or of different herbs that like to live in the same area. And if you start to pay attention to that ecosystem, then it's like a light bulb goes on. You're like, oh my gosh, right. I always see cleavers down by the water in these very wet, damp areas, and where the water is flowing, and it has this affinity to work on the whole lymphatic system of the body and the kidneys and urinary tract. And same thing with nettle, it loves those waterways, and it works within the waterways of our body. So those are things that are not like they were just made up, but people paid attention to these things. Our ancestors paid attention to all of that. The ecology that is around us is also reflective of the tissues of our own ecological state, of our tissues and organs and everything within us. So there's this incredible connection too that you can start to really see, and it'll widen out and broaden your whole understanding of the human body and also the plants and the ways that they work on the human being, but then also their own unique, like their prabhava, their special quality that they have, their spirit. So there's so much that I could just keep going on about the level of perception that starts to shift within us the more that we can spend time with the earth. And I know that that's something that might be really difficult for people if you live in the middle of the city, or you feel like you don't have, like wild spaces to go to or whatever. But just even taking time to walk, in a park or in your yard or wherever you can be, and if you can make like a pilgrimage, I would think of it as like a venture to go out to a place that is more natural as far as having less human impact as possible, the more that'll benefit you and support you, and in so many ways. So I hope that is just a little bit of insight, to just a reminder. It's like you probably know all this stuff already, but I just find it really helpful to take that, just have little reminders like that, because sometimes you're on a screen right now watching this, and so just remembering, oh yeah, what do I want to do with my free time? Or, you might feel like you never have time to go and take a walk or go to unplug yourself from everything that you have to do, but no one's ever going to give you that time. You have to carve it out for yourself. You have to make that for yourself. I just took a whole month basically off of screens, and it was incredible. I wasn't like on vacation the whole time. I was still working and I was still doing things, but I was interacting with human beings more, which was really cool. Get to experience just more of that personal connection and more of just a quieting of the mind. And so I just encourage you to take that time, as much as you can. This summertime here in this northern hemisphere is just a wonderful opportunity to take a weekend to just have a little reset for your senses and just experience what that feels like, because it's not only going to affect your whole perception, but it also is one of a critical way that I also encourage people who have sleep issues or anything like that. The way that the light on the screens can affect our whole, endocrine system. It's just really helpful to just get some space like that. So yeah, I just wanted to encourage this, and if you do, go out camping this sometime this summer, or maybe you go on a hike or do something fun in a natural area, just try practicing not even taking your phone with you, as far as like to take pictures of everything. So it's something that's also kind of habitual in our culture. Seja and I went on this hike and to this beautiful epic waterfall, and we had spent like all day getting there, and we sat there for like 2 hours. We just didn't do anything. We were just sitting there and just being in this amazing place. And that is also kind of, a hard thing to do sometimes when we have such a fast-paced culture that we always feel like we need to be doing something. But to just be on earth as a human being is just incredibly healing. And one thing that was really interesting is that we watched dozens of people come up to this hike, and they had spent hours and hours getting there. And we literally were watching people, like just dozens of them, get up to the waterfall, take a selfie, or have someone else take a picture of them, and then they turn around and just hike back down. Maybe you wouldn't do that, but it's something that is definitely, like, there's so much of life that is continually passing us by if we don't take that pause, and if we don't just disconnect ourselves from a minute of like having to take a picture of whatever it is. Maybe just take it in and really feel it and enjoy the way that that waterfall is coming down, and just the all of the tiny beautiful things that you will see if you take that space, like the mist and all of the rainbows in the mist and all of the little ferns and mosses growing on the rocks around that waterfall. There's so much in this life to experience, and I just wanted to share this as a reminder to just soak up all of the beauty that is available to us on this earth, that is just easily passing us by every day. Even if it's not going out somewhere, you drink water every day, just taking the moment to experience what it's like drinking water, and that we have water to drink, and how incredible it tastes, and how precious and beautiful it is that we have that opportunity. So just all of those things, there's so many things that when we take a little bit of space from the busy world, that we'll start to see every little blessing that's in our lives. And so I hope this serves you well and is just a support to you today, and I just so appreciate you tuning in here. So take care and be well.